Good morning and a very warm welcome to everyone. My name is Adil Rabin and I'm one of the consulting directors within RSM's UK's NetSuite consulting practice. Thank you very much for taking time out of your undoubtedly busy schedule to attend this session. We hope that you'll find this session helpful. It's the reason why we've developed this forum. It's our second user group event of the year. And we aim to hold many more events over the coming years. The reason for these events is really to start building that NetSuite community and having a forum that we can essentially get together, discuss ideas, collaborate, and really with the intention of ensuring that you as the NetSuite users and community get the best out of your NetSuite investment. Our intention has always been to hold these events face to face. Unfortunately, with the times, the way they are, and the situation that we're facing currently, it has meant that we've had to hold these events remotely. Our previous one was held remotely. This one is obviously being held remotely as well. Fingers crossed, when it comes down to next year, we will be in a position, hopefully, to start holding these events in our offices in London, and hopefully that will bring the users together, yourselves together, and it will ensure that there is an avenue for you to start collaborating and discussing and kind of getting those discussions going face to face, which always helps in a forum like this. Okay, so we've got quite a lot of content to cover today, and just a few housekeeping points to mention before we begin. This session is going to be roughly about an hour and a half, there or thereabouts, depending on how many questions we get in. Please do ask questions as we're going through the presentations. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A functionality embedded within WebEx. You'll see it's in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You can see a Q&A box. If you don't see that Q&A box, it's more likely that it's probably hidden, and then you might see an icon with 3 dots as shown in this slide. If you click on that, it should open up the Q&A box for you to ask questions. Another point, obviously, as we're working remotely on this and we're running this remotely, we hope that there aren't going to be any technical issues or glitches, but in the event that we do, we apologize in advance, and we'll try to navigate our way around those glitches as much as possible to ensure that we can essentially keep on going. Okay, so what does the agenda look like today? So I'll soon be handing over to my colleague Tim Evans, who's also one of the consulting directors within our practice, and he'll be providing an overview and a highlight of what's included in the latest release, the 20.2 release. We'll then have Tom Gilbert, who's our VAT technology lead from RSM, and he'll be providing a bit of an insight into the digitalization of tax and the direction tax is moving globally. And that kind of leads nicely into SuiteTax, which is our fourth box here, which essentially Tim Evans and Kamlesh Rajaguru from NetSuite will be providing an overview and an update on NetSuite's next generation tax engine, SuiteTax. And finally, we have James Chisholm, who heads up the products team in NetSuite, and he'll be providing a few snippets and insights into what the short-term and longer-term view looks like from a product perspective, to give you a bit of information as to how the product is moving and the direction it's moving in. And then we'll finally have a Q&A slot at the end to answer any questions that you may have as we've gone through the presentation. Okay, so let's begin, and I'll hand over to Tim Evans to take us through the 20.2 release.
Thank you, Adil. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to NetSuite Release 2020.2. There are 3 things I'm going to talk you through this morning. I'm going to briefly go over the NetSuite release process overview. So just talk you through what actually happens when NetSuite does release or does do a release, so that you're aware what the process is. I'll then go through some of the new changes that have come out in 2020.2 and highlight them for you, what I think are relevant for you, and particularly call out what's in it for you with some of these changes. And then lastly, I'll go through your call to action. We are late in the release cycle at the moment, so the call to action is possibly a little late. but I'll discuss that in a second. So going through the NetSuite release process, NetSuite delivers 2 major releases every year in Q1 and Q3. What I'm talking about here applies to core NetSuite only, so the core accounting system, the core CRM system. Doesn't necessarily apply to Suite apps, which are sort of the additional things that you can add onto the system, such as electronic payments and things like that. They can be released anytime. But the core platform has 2 releases every year in Q1 and Q3. It's rolled out in 4 phases to customers. As part of the release process, you get a release preview, and you also get information pertaining to the release. So NetSuite are very communicative. They make sure that you're aware of what is happening when it happens, and as an administrator of your NetSuite system, you should pay attention to these changes and to these messages. As I said, it's a 4-phase release that NetSuite goes through. Pre-phase 0, we're currently at phase 4. So we've already been through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Phase 4 is actually tomorrow. Phase 4 is roughly 60% of customer accounts get upgraded. And as I said, that is actually occurring tomorrow. NetSuite schedules upgrades to avoid month end. So the dates when they actually occur can vary, but NetSuite will always schedule them so that they're not around the month end. They're nearly always on a Friday evening when demand on the system is low and not at a month end. Okay. Release preview accounts are made available adjacent to each upgrade phase, and they're indicated by the grey boxes on that shot there. So if you're on phase 4, you basically get 6 weeks availability of release preview. Okay. When is your upgrade? When you log into NetSuite, you will see a new release port that will display when your upgrade date is going to be. You are also sent campaign emails. So if you're an administrator of your system, NetSuite will send you notifications. You'll basically get 3 emails during the release cycle. As an administrator, you should know when your upgrade is going to be. Know when your release date is. Make a note of it, stick it in your diary. If you're a premium tier customer, you can request a change to your date. In other words, you can move between the 4 release dates. You can't pick a date and specify it, not at the moment anyway. So if you're on a premium tier and you're in phase 3 and that doesn't work for you, you can request to move to phase 4 and that can be accommodated. Okay. Okay, so key point here is to please do remember your upgrade date. Okay, make sure you make a note of when it's going to be. Does NetSuite ever change the release date? Typically no, but it's not impossible because obviously NetSuite prioritizes QA. So if the release isn't meeting QA targets, it's not unknown for the release dates to be changed. That most recently happened in 2017.1. That was a pretty stressful release, and it moved quite a lot. But the key point here is make sure you're aware of when your account is going to be upgraded. Okay? Okay, so as part of the release cycle, you are given a release preview. What is it? It's basically a play account you can use to test your account on the new version that's coming. All your configurations and customizations that you've deployed in your production account will be available. It's available to you until your production account is upgraded. All the logins are preserved, but be aware that some functionality is limited. So you will see this pop up after your release is available in your list of accounts. You'll see an RP appearing as you do with the sandbox. So you'll be able to swap into the release preview login. However, that assumes that you've actually used a release preview. To get a release preview, you've got to use it. So in a previous release, if you didn't bother logging into the release preview or if you didn't use it enough, NetSuite will take it away from you. If that's occurred, you have to go back into request it. So if you go into your release preview, you can see you've got, on this screenshot here, I've got opt-in required. So in other words, this is an account where they haven't used it. So you would need to request it. Okay? But if you have been using it, then it should appear for you automatically. Is the release preview fully functional? As I said, yeah, generally it is, but there is some functionality that is limited. Things like PayPal integration and Outlook integration may not work, but most of the other functions obviously will work, and because it's designed for you to be able to test your account and make sure that the new release isn't going to break your business functions. Okay. All right, let's talk about sandboxes. So standard sandbox account, so if you're in a shared instance of NetSuite and you have a standard sandbox, that will get upgraded after your production accounts. However, if you have a premium tier and you have premium sandboxes, you can request they can be upgraded after phase 1. So anytime after phase 1, you can request that your premium sandbox gets upgraded. Now, if you are on a premium tier, and I know some of the customers on this call are, I do recommend that you use a sandbox for your testing. The reason for that is because it's going to be more performant than the release preview environment. So be aware though, if you upgrade a premium sandbox, it can't be undone and it cannot be refreshed until your production instance is upgraded. So if you've upgraded the sandbox and your production is still not upgraded, no refreshes can occur. Okay, what happens to your account during an upgrade? Basically, it goes offline. NetSuite schedules the upgrade typically around midnight at the local time zone wherever you are. It's plus or minus a couple of hours. They say that the window takes about 4 hours, so you would expect it to be offline on the Friday around midnight for the date of your upgrade. Okay. So all logins, all online forms, website, web stores, web services integrations, they're all offline. Okay? You can be notified under your admin general preferences if you want to receive an email as an administrator that the upgrade is completed. You can elect to do so. Otherwise, you just wait to see if you can log in the morning. Okay. The new release dashboard portlet is your gateway to the information center for each release. It contains, obviously, your release dates. It also directs you to information using the online resources that NetSuite makes available to you. If you've hidden this portlet, you may need to personalize the dashboard to make it come up again. Okay. The things that it has on here, release overview, that's a video vignette of the new functionality that becomes available. Obviously, a new preview login. You also get the release notes, which are the full descriptions of the new features. Sneak peeks, basically a marketing highlights of the new release. Release preview guide. This is a high-level strategy for you for testing. So it basically includes test plans and test notes that you should customize and adopt to your business practices, which you can then use as the basis for your testing of the new release. And then lastly, training resources are the new feature training announcements and FAQs that NetSuite provides. Okay, so it's all available to you from one convenient portlet. Suite Answers is another great resource. NetSuite does videos with the product managers on the lead up to the release. These are available after. They're basically done in the middle of the night for us, but they're available in Suite Answers afterwards. So if you click on videos and then go to the new release previews, you'll see them all listed there. And that's the product managers talking you through the changes or the new features in the system. Okay, so lots of good resources are made available for you. Obviously, all for free. All you need is to log in into NetSuite, and they're there. Okay. Okay. Upgrade release messages. Don't ignore these. You, as an administrator, you will get 3 of them. It'll start with a general release announcement, which is sent about 2 weeks in advance of phase 1. That will include your release preview and upgrade date. So that's the first notification that you'll get of when you're actually going to be upgraded. Okay. The next one that comes is the release preview announcement, which is sent the day your release preview is available to you. Okay. And lastly, your release upgrade notice, which is sent 1 week before your upgrade, which is sent telling you this, you're going to be upgraded in a week's time. So if you're in phase 4, you would have received it last Friday. Okay, some basic rules to be aware of. NetSuite cannot delay the upgrade of a sandbox after production has been upgraded. That's important if you're using a sandbox for any development. That is something to consider. You would need to plan your development accordingly. If you have upgraded a premium sandbox, it cannot be refreshed before production is upgraded. I think I already discussed that. The release preview is never refreshed. So they take a snapshot of your account at phase 0, which can be quite some time before phase 4, and it's never refreshed. So just consider that it can be quite out of date, particularly again if you're doing development or if you're making changes to your account. And lastly, there is no rollback. Once you are upgraded, you are upgraded. Okay. So to summarize the release process, no, you upgrade. I can't emphasize that enough. Make sure it's in your diary. Okay. Know your release preview dates. Consider the impact of the upgrade of your development schedule. So if you're going through development, consider how you're going to manage that with respect to the dates. Okay. Consider the impact of upgrading your environment. If you have multiple sandboxes and some of them are premium, are you going to upgrade them? Which ones are you going to upgrade? So plan for it. Do utilize the new release portlet for resources. Okay, read the help, watch the videos, and use the Suite answers for training. Okay. All right, let's go on to some more interesting things. So we're going to talk about some of the change highlights for the administrator. So first off, we have support for customer scheduled maintenances. It's a new ability to schedule some maintenances at the account level, i.e. at your request. As an administrator, you will be able to request when there's changes. This kind of contradicts what I just told you, but it is a change that's occurring in NetSuite. So NetSuite has, over the past few years, been moving to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. What that does is it brings significant enhancements to the way that the system, the NetSuite application, is managed from the back end. On one hand, I guess it's bad news because as administrator, it might mean you've got more work. You have to choose when you want an update to occur and advise NetSuite. On the other hand, you have the option to nominate a time for these updates. That's obviously more convenient to you. At the moment, you don't. You have to accept when NetSuite does it, even if it's not convenient. So the first thing that's happening at the moment is Oracle database updates can be scheduled. Keep an eye out as administrator for notifications. And take action if required. So as this rolls out, more and more things you will be able to schedule, even if you're on a shared instance. Okay. Okay. Next thing, account-specific domain support in the file cabinet. NetSuite's been moving towards account-specific domains for a while. It's now impacting the file cabinet. So you can see the examples there. It's the account number rather than the data center. Used to just reference the data center. Why is that important? Because if you're referencing a file in the external application or in some code, you've hard-coded it to that URL, you will need to update those links to reflect the new coding. Okay, some changes to CSV import. Two new records have been added. You can now import groups or entities, so you could build groups in CSV and then import them, and vendor prepayment transactions can be imported. It's quite nice. And a new sublist on invoice records. If you're importing invoices and you're using billing costs of customers, you could now attach billable expenses as a sublist to the invoice. Previously, that was not available. So if you were using some third-party project management system, for example, that might be handy, or some third-party expense system, that might be something that you might need. Okay, new records customization. What is it? This is really nice. This is something that once you see and you've used it, you wonder how you ever live without this. It's a new feature that provides a consolidated view of all the business record types in NetSuite and their objects. So to put that in another way, instead of having to navigate to customization, list records, fields, and then choose and then see what it is, it gives you one record-centric view of all the custom objects that are linked to that record. It's actually really nice. In fact, it's so nice, I'm going to demonstrate it for you now. So let me share my screen. Okay, so to get into this, we go to customization, list record fields, record customization. You can see it there. So from the left, you can see it groups all of the records by their type. So I'm going to use customers because we all understand customers. So I'll expand entity, and then I'm going to click on customer. Okay? You can see it brings up all the information pertaining to the customer record. I can rename it. It gives me the customer name. It gives me the ID, which is what it uses for programmatically. It tells me what origin it is. Is it a system or is it custom? Record family. And you can see it gives me a list of all of the standard fields, the custom fields, what comes from an app. I can add a field from here. What sublists pertain to it? So if I want to look at all the custom fields that are on a customer, I can just click on this, and then it shows them to me. Okay? And I can manipulate them. If I want to see what sublists are available, I can see that. You see, it's not new information. It's just presenting it in a new way. So previously, I would have to have gone through all here and then gone under entity fields and then filtered by it. It's much harder. This is much easier to just see from a record perspective. How have I impacted? How have I customized it? It's very nice. Okay, of course, I can drill down to it and make changes if I want to. Once I drill down to it, you can see it's just taking me to the custom field. Okay, very nice. Okay, if you're an administrator, that should have just excited you, or if you're a developer, that should have just excited you. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is the new records catalog. So what is this? It's a feature that gives you a contextual reference tool that describes NetSuite's model structure and behavior. That's a lot of words. Basically, if you're a developer and you're developing integrations or using the new Suite Analytics tool and you want to understand NetSuite's relationships between its records a bit more deeply, this is a tool for you. Okay. Again, I'm going to demonstrate this briefly. So let me share my screen again. Okay, I'll go to the dashboard. Okay, so it's under Setup and it's under Records Catalog. Okay, so it gives me a list of all the records that are available here. I'm going to scroll down and I'll go back to customers because we all have customers. And we all understand what a customer is. Okay, scrolling down. Okay, so the SuiteScript Analytic API is on the available channels. Okay, so anything when I expand, it gives me a list of what available channels are available. For customer, it's just the SuiteScript Analytic API at the moment. Okay, if I click on customer, it gives me the basic record information about it, the original name, what the ID is. So the ID is the script ID, the origin of the record, either system or custom, the record family, and obviously the record type. We can rename it and we can customize it from here. If I click down to the Script Analytic API, that gives me a link to, as it's building it, all of the fields that appear on the record, what they're called, what they're used for, what their type, what the join is. Okay, so I can see the fields and I can see the joins. Okay, it's pretty propeller heady, but it's really good. If you are using this, if you are building integrations using NetSuite, it's a really good way to look at the record. Okay, all right. Okay, so some other key administration changes that you should be aware of. Enhanced view file security in file cabinet attachments. This was available earlier. So basically what this is relating to is being able to attach expense reports and make them only available to people who can lodge the expense report. Previously, you had to have access to the entire folder to be able to do it, which meant everyone who accessed that folder could see expense attachment, which obviously isn't great from a security perspective. That changed in the previous release. What's changed now is that there's a better migration tool. So you can migrate any historical expense report attachments to the new functionality. Full access role is being deprecated in the next release. If you are using that role, when you log in as administrator, it will be telling you in big yellow letters at the top of your NetSuite account, you must stop using that role. Whoever's got it, take it away from them and give them another appropriate role, basically. Improvements to personal information removal. So changes have been made aimed at improving performance. Again, it's GDPR related. They've added the administrator role to the list of roles, which is quite nice. It's not possible to edit the administrator role. It's there, but you can't edit it. Okay. File cabinet enhancements for company-wide usage. This allows you to get a set of permission on a file cabinet item that overrides the folder permissions. For example, you might have a policy document that you want to share across the company, but you don't want to grant access to the folder it resides in. Okay, so that's quite nice. Deletion tracking support for additional record types. So they've added additional record types to the deletion tracking support. This is basically, in NetSuite, when you delete a record, it just goes. It looks like it was never there. It looks like it never existed, which isn't so great for auditing. So to resolve that, they have deletion tracking. So now additional records are supported in that. And lastly, an important one, if you are using single sign-on, there is coming deprecation of Google OpenID single sign-on and NetSuite inbound single sign-on. So if you're using those, either of those methods, you'll need to migrate to OpenID Connect single sign-on or SAML single sign-on. And if you have no idea what I was talking about, then don't worry about it. Okay, let's talk about some accounting changes. So this is a nice one. Intercompany framework. It's new functionality to help you manage cross-subsidiary business workflows. So what this is, it replaces the old automated intercompany management feature, which is basically arm's length processing between two related subsidiaries. So the way that worked, you'd raise a purchase order, it would automatically relate or create a related sales order. There'd be related fulfillments, and then all the eliminations would be posted for you automatically. That's all being done away with, and there is this new intercompany framework. I can't discuss this in 45 minutes, let alone, or 3 hours, let alone 45 minutes. But if you do have complex cross-subsidiary transacting, this is actually worth getting into. The best thing about it is that it allows you to create cross charges and do things like do markups, which is something that customers have always wanted. So if you're doing work on behalf of if some of your employees are doing work on behalf of another subsidiary, for example, this is something that you could get into. So have a think about it. If this is something that you think you might need, please talk to us. Okay. This is exciting. Currency exchange rate types. So previously in NetSuite, you had an exchange rate, the daily exchange rate. I am talking about the daily spot rate here, and that was it. You now have the ability to create a new exchange rate type and then define the type that you want to use on the transaction. It is related to the intercompany framework. So for example, if you want to have, obviously you might have the daily spot rate, but you might want to have a different rate for intercompany transactions. That's what this feature allows you to do. Very nice. I know it's something that a lot of customers have been asking for, so it is now available. Okay, sequential liability. This is a Suite app. It allows you to manage project, client, and vendor cash flow. So if you have an instance where you only want to pay vendors who are undertaking project work when the project has been paid, this allows you to see that. So you can see it from a project level, what the liability is, or what the revenue is coming in, and can I pay that liability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it gives you the ability to view a summary of project-related payable and receivable transactions per subsidiary. Okay, so if you are managing projects on a project-by-project basis, or payment of projects, or payment of bills related to projects, this is the app for you. Some people may call it pay when paid. If you're using pay when paid, this is for you. Okay, Suite approvals enhancements. It now extends to requisitions, and there is also support for cross-subsidiary approval, which is actually quite nice. It previously only worked on purchase orders, now extends to requisitions, which is very nice. You can also set up a subsidiary restriction values on the employee record of approvers through the roles assigned to them. So you can now approve across subsidiaries. So if you need a person in the UK to approve something from somebody in Germany, for example, you can now do that, which is very nice. Okay, other key accounting changes, system notes on currency records. That's an audit requirement that's now being met. Create automated transaction system user. This is an accounting preference, and this has ramifications, so pay attention to this one. It's improving auditability. Transactions created via web servers or via script can now be created as system. Previously, it would have been whoever the user was who set up that integration. Okay, so rather than it being that person, it will now be the integration that will say it'll say system. Sales return accounting, that is a new suite app aimed at the retail sector. It enables you to track returns separately to the mapped sales return account to meet retail accounting requirements. So if you are in the retail sector and you deal with a lot of returns, that could be a suite app for you. Fixed assets improvements, there's some changes for Japan. If you're operating fixed assets in Japan, that could be good. Balancing segments, enhancements. That was something that was introduced, or balancing segments was something that was introduced in 2020.1. There have been some enhancements aimed at improving usability and functionality. If you don't know what balancing segments are, it basically enables you to say, if you have cost centers or profit centers, and you want to always ensure that any transaction between profit centers always balances, then you can do that. Okay, or then balancing segments facilitates that. And lastly, general ledger printing enhancements. It's basically changes to support multi-book, okay, and other intercompany transactions. It's quite nice. Okay, let's look at banking. There's some big changes here. Okay, so start with auto-create transactions from bank import. You have the new ability to create transactions from imported bank statements. Auto-create rules enable automated create and match for deposits and charges on statements, as well as charges and refunds. Previously, these were highlighted in the statement, and you had to create the transactions manually in the UI, in the reconciliation screen. Now they can be created automatically if they match the rules that you set up. So as you're importing the statement, not only is it matching for you automatically, all those additional charges, if they meet the rules, can be created for you automatically. Obviously, any transaction that falls out of the rules that you define, you still have to log in, check, manually eyeball, and then with human intervention, then create. But it makes life a bit easier. Okay, financial institutions parser plugin. This is the thing that it uses to connect to financial institutions. What does it do now? It now supports additional data types. It's been modified. It can read bank, credit card, and corporate card expense data. So if you want to connect the connector to Barclays, for example, and import Barclays card information, you can do that. Okay, so if you're using corporate credit cards through Barclays or some other bank, you could now build that link and have them built in. However, if you're using American Express, there is a corporate card connectivity coming automatically. So it's related to the previous one that I just discussed, but this new suite app, when it's available, it is scheduled to be available at the end of this month, will allow you to automatically import expense charges by employees to their corporate Amex cards. Okay? I think that'll be quite a good one. But like I said, if you're not using Amex, if you are using Barclays card or one of those, the connection can still be made using the Parser plugin. But it would need a technical person to do that link for you. Okay? The other thing we have in banking is Bank Feed Suite App for EMEA. We have had a Bank Feed Suite App for the North America for quite a while, which basically enables you to connect pre-configured connections for downloading of statement data from North American banks. So at the end of November, we have this coming for EMEA, HSBC, Barclays, Lloyds, etc. Okay, so it enables you in the UI using plug and or click and connect to be able to configure to connect to Lloyds and then download statements. Very nice. Okay. Other key banking changes? Better duplicate management. Duplicates were flagged, but they had to be managed manually. Now they can manage from the match bank data page, just saving a step. Banking import history improvements. Previously called imported statement list, this now includes additional information such as status, who processed, data source, dates submitted, etc. and so forth. I'm going to step forward because I am running out of time. I'm conscious of time. So let's move on to vendors and purchasing. Vendor variances now support additional item types. Previously, this only allowed you to support inventory items. You can set this to serve other charging inventory items. Okay, so you've marked these can be fulfilled and billed. You can have those labels. Okay, vendor. I use the vendor pre. You can have them. They can be approved in the brief center, which is quite nice. Vendor bills can be approved in the employee center, which is a bit of a license saver. So if you're setting up and you're routing vendor bills to approval, you can now do this from the employee center. So approvers only need access to the employee center rather than a full license, is basically what that means. Okay, other changes, due date on vendor credits. This makes consumption of credit more accurate during bank payments. Vendor prepayments, additional functionality, minor changes, a make copy function, a void button, and a new prepayment balance on the subsidiary record of a multi-subsidiary vendor. Okay. The due date on vendor credits is, I know, something people have been looking for. So when you're building criteria to search for transactions to pay, you can now do it. Previously, it would just, because there was no due date, it would just pick up all vendor credits. But now you can filter it based around the due date. Okay. This is a nice one. Order management. Let's look at invoice groups. What is this? It's a new feature that reduces the number of invoices sent to customers. For example, you might want to combine invoices like customer purchase order number. So you can, up to 100 invoices can be included in an invoice group. So the way this works is you create invoices in the normal manner, okay? But rather than sending the individual invoices to the customer, you're able to now group them and then only send them 1 or 2 invoices rather than 200. It has a separate numbering sequence to invoices. They do appear in the transaction numbering sequence long if you are using this feature, but invoice groups are not transactions. They don't appear in searches, nor do they post to the GL. It's very important to understand. You have to run the group invoice procedure for NetSuite to create the group invoice. This process can, however, be automated if you use billing operations, or you could do it using a workflow. You can print a grouped invoice, and obviously you can send it to a customer. It is like standard invoices. It uses a template, which can be modified to suit your requirements. Okay. You may also need to modify the statement layout to restrict statements to only 1 line per invoice group. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit confusing. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate this briefly for you. So it starts by looking at a customer record. So if you want to group records for a customer, it is set on a per customer basis. Under financial, you can see I've got the option to group invoices. Okay, so under financial on the customer record, if I want to group them for this customer, I can then do so. So if I then go back and I create a sales order for a customer, I'm just going to make a copy. You'll see on the invoice, on the sales order that I've generated, it's marked for invoice grouping. Okay, so if I want to group it, I can ungroup it, whatever I need to do. Okay. If I then generate the sales order and then generate the bills inherit the invoice grouping. Okay. To then process, so let's assume that I've billed this customer, I've created the sales orders, they've all come in, whether they've come in by web service, whatever it is. If I want to then group the invoices, I come into transactions, sales, and you can see I've got group invoices. Okay, luckily there are some that I created earlier. I can filter it by customer. I can set the invoice date that I want it to be done by. I can group it by PO if I want to. You can see here I've got different purchase orders on the customer record. So if I group it by PO, you can see the group indicator. It's going to split it into two separate groups. Okay? If I don't do that, then obviously I can cherry pick the ones I want to group, or I can mark all, and then I can submit it, and off it goes. Okay? I won't do that now because obviously time is of the essence. There is one I created earlier. But go back to my customer and I look at financial. I look at sales and transactions. Under here, I can see all the invoices that I created for the customer. And I can see here the invoices that are grouped. Now, I've only created one of this customer so far, and I haven't bothered creating a sequence, so obviously it started at 1. But if I done it appropriately, it would have a number under there. Remember, it is a different sequence to the invoice numbers. Okay? But if I want to go and see the grouped invoice, I can click on 1, and then the invoice group comes up. Okay? And this shows me the invoices that are contained within the group. Okay? I can email it to the customer if I want to, or I can print it. And there's the invoice. Looks terrible. I haven't changed the layout, but you'll forgive me. Okay? That is a nice feature. Again, I know that is something that customers have been asking for. There was a Suite app that was doing this before, and this replaces that Suite app, and is actually easier and nicer to use. Okay. Other changes in order management: monthly recurring revenue workbook, 6 new reports to support advanced revenue management appear in Suite Analytics Workbook. Required deposit workflow. This is a new workflow that can enforce collection of a deposit on a sales order. So it can be based on items, percent of sales order value, or on an entered value. So if you're in a business where we need customers to pay a deposit up front, where they place an order, this workflow can support that. Multi-language support for return authorization from Case Suite app. So basically there's a Suite app there that allows you to create return authorizations from a case, typically aimed at the WD space. That now supports multi-language. Bill of Landing Suite app is a new Suite app for generation of bill of landing documents for export. If you export, this may be relevant for you with the Brexit changes. So a bill of landing document, it's a document that you can then obviously send to shipping companies. Lot and serial number trace Suite app. This is a new Suite app to trace components from a supplier to an end customer. Trace can be forwards or backwards. This replaces the Suite app Suite Solution Lot Traceability. So if you're using that one, you might want to look at this new Suite app. And installment billing enhancements. If you're using installments, that can now be split across all of the installments. Previously, it was collected on the first installment, making them uneven. So that's quite nice. Okay, inventory manufacturing changes. The biggest thing coming here is the new supply planning. It takes sales order details to generate dependent demand for work order components. This tool enables you to balance supply and demand to achieve your organization's financial and service objectives. It's very complex, and I clearly can't explain it in 3 hours, let alone 3 minutes. But if you think this is something you might be of interest to you, have a talk to us. Again, it's aimed at that WD manufacturing space. Other changes, again, I won't go through all of these. There are some worthwhile changes here. What's the one I want to call out? Probably inbound shipping supply allocation allows you to allocate based on inbound shipment. So if you've got an inbound shipment notification, you can start to allocate that stock. I know a couple of customers have been looking for that. Allocation fill-out rate, new functionality that uses batch allocation logic to calculate the largest possible number of order lines fully allocated on time. This in turn improves the metric of fill rate KPI, which is quite nice. So some good changes there. Okay, let's talk about taxes. We're going to go into those in a little bit. The biggest thing that's coming is, or that's in 2020.2 is tax reporting framework. It's a new suite app reporting framework for all the NetSuite SuiteTax and Legacy Tax and the localization suite apps. This does apply to legacy tax also. So if you're using the old NetSuite tax system, not SuiteTax, it's basically a more streamlined way for NetSuite to manage the complex tax VAT GST delivery process across the whole world. So for example, if you had operations in India, you can now install a localization suite app to India. If you do not, then your account is not burdened with lots of code relating to India that you're never going to use. This is what would have happened previously. Okay? So it's a change under the hood, basically. Other key changes we've had this year, changes to tax audit files to support the Norway SAFT financial report, a Saudi Arabia VAT rate update, Germany, Ireland, Austria VAT rate. That was in release 3.117.0, which was released on the 22nd of December. So if you've upgraded to that, you will obviously have that rate update already. SuiteTax, some key changes. Actually, I'll skip this because we're going to talk about SuiteTax shortly. Okay. Lastly, user interface changes. Critical announcements in Suite Answers. So if there's something that needs your attention, if the system is down or something like that, they will now be announced in Suite Answers. So when you go to Suite Answers, you'll see it as a big banner. You may have seen that already. Code sample highlighting. Suite Answers, where it contains sample code, now highlights the code to sample or the code sample, and also supplies you with a copy function. So for example, if you're using formulae for SQL statements and say searches, and you're looking at Suite Answers for help, it will highlight them. And the end of support for the reset button in standard form pages, it is being deprecated, that reset button. Okay. All right, your call to action. This is slightly too late given that the final phase is tomorrow. But as an administrator, you should test. You should be testing to make sure that the new release does not break critical processes in your business. You should look at the new release to identify any new functionality that may be of use to you. So looking at what we've discussed, what you've read in the release notes, what may be of interest to you? What do you need to migrate? If you are going to start to use the new functionality, how are you going to migrate to it? So develop a migration plan to move existing processes to the new functionality. So for example, if you're going to start to use vendor prepayments, how are you going to start to use that? What are you currently doing for that? And what will you need to migrate to use that? Obviously, we recommend testing. NetSuite does provide you with release preview test plans. They are available in the main new release portlet, as I discussed. So click on that, download those, adopt them to your business. Make sure that your business process flows are adequately reflected in the test plan. So if you have a complex order to cash process, make sure that is reflected and make sure that you test it. Okay. What should you do? Test your business workflows. Again, order to cash, procure to pay, whatever it is, whatever process flow you have, test it, make sure it works from A to Z. Test your custom reports and forms. So if you customize reports, make sure the new release doesn't break them. What forms do you have? Make sure they're not broken. Test any other customizations. If you have scripts developed, make sure they're going to work. Test any integrations that you have. Test your installed Suite apps. Make sure they're not breaking. If you have a web store hosted by NetSuite, test that. And then obviously Suite Analytics Connect, make sure that works. Test, test, test. Okay. Identify new functionality that may be of interest to you. This is a good one. So looking at the release preview, what's going to pique your interest? What do you need to look at? Best practices to review the release notes and release training early in the release to identify new functionality that will be of interest to you. For each new functionality you identify, determine if the new functionality either replaces a process you currently undertake manually or is through some customization, or if it's completely new. If it's a process that you do through some custom solution, how are you going to migrate to it? Okay? Plan, test, migrate. Okay. And that's myself done. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Tom Gilbert, who's going to talk you through tax digitalization and what it means for you.
Right, thanks, Tim. So as a quick introduction, my name is Tom Gilbert and I lead the VAT technology team here at RSM. It wasn't actually that long ago I was in your position, having previously worked in industry for a number of years at a large multinational technology company, where part of my role was to lead indirect tax digitalization projects to meet VAT reporting requirements globally. So I do have a lot of practical hands-on experience. So in this short session, I wanted to cover a brief overview of making tax digital, the reasons HMRC introduced it, and also then look at the lessons learnt from overseas, what the future could hold, and the challenges ahead. So to set the big picture in the UK, the latest government figures put the tax gap at around £31 billion, i.e. the difference between what they actually receive in tax payments and what they think they should receive. So obviously a pretty large number. And considering the impact of COVID, I think this will become even more important as tax authorities look to raise as much tax revenue as possible. So looking in a bit more detail, VAT is quite a substantial element of this at around £10 billion a year. However, HMRC have determined that the failure to take care and error are really the largest segments. So this really helps explain the background to the making tax digital for VAT requirements and the current requirements around the digital record keeping, digital links and digital submission requirements. HMRC has also invested significant resources in this flagship project of theirs, well over £1 billion. However, in reality, using an ERP system like NetSuite is a really good start to meeting these requirements. However, there are still challenges ahead. So looking forwards, we know that a future requirement is to include what HMRC define as supplementary data. And this is actually already highlighted in the MTD VAT notice and is really referring to transactional data. A key element here is that transitioning to a system of transactional data reporting requires a really high level of data quality, and this calls for a shift of focus, and data quality is already pretty high on the agenda of a lot of the large corporates that I'm already talking to. We've seen this in other countries. So if you look at Spain, for example, with their real-time reporting requirements, if you've got any discrepancies or errors in your transactional data when you're submitting that, they are immediately uncovered by the tax authorities, and that transaction is rejected. So an example of this is the customer's VAT registration number. Now, HMRC don't give out much information on their future plans, but they have alluded to more data analysis in the future. And I've got a quote on here on screen that was from a House of Commons Public Accounts Committee hearing last week. So we do know that more analysis is coming. So if we look at what other tax authorities have put in place, well, the future of VAT compliance really is going digital. These are some of the initiatives already implemented. So you've got the likes of real-time reporting in Spain, in Hungary. You've got SAFT, Standard Audit File for Tax. Tim mentioned Norway just now, which was delayed for a number of years. You've got SAFT in a number of other countries as well. You've got the e-invoicing requirements in Italy, for example, with their pre-clearance requirements there. You've got Greece looking at this as well. And the final type there is split payments, although really that's being used less and less nowadays. And it's also clear that data is being shared amongst and between tax authorities a lot more. So the big challenges to businesses here really are a lack of standards. So although SAFT is an OECD standard, unfortunately there is nothing standard among how each country implements that. So each country implements their own requirements or their own versions. So it does make it very challenging for businesses. Looking at this a little bit further as well in terms of data, we know that tax authorities are also investing in the latest technologies. This is the results from an OECD survey published last year looking at tax administrations, and we can see on the left-hand side over 2/3 of tax authorities are already using RPA, implementing it or planning RPA, and an even higher percentage are looking at using artificial intelligence to get better insights and analysis on their data. So this really highlights why data is key, and we are seeing a big focus on data quality among large corporates. And we've just seen as well there's a big focus on data analytics amongst tax authorities. The quote here really tells the story of what's already happening. The fact that electronic data from third parties and tax administrations, as well as other internally generated data, is being used in an increasingly joined up way with larger, more integrated data sets and fueling a significant increase in the use of analytics tools and techniques. We've also heard a number of tax investigations into businesses where data does not tie together consistently across jurisdictions, so we know this is happening. So bringing this back to your businesses and the VAT calculation and what you can do in this area, I'd say it's really a case of going back to the basics to ensure that transactions are being set correctly. Things like reviewing tax codes, looking at the VAT determination. Who is actually making those decisions? Is it automated, or is it relying on potentially undertrained staff, or have you got a tax engine in place? Do those staff need additional VAT training? Are you able to pick up errors, or actually would they potentially go unnoticed? And this can sometimes be quite nuanced. For example, on a purchase, if VAT is 0, then does it matter if it's coded as 0 rated or exempt? Well, historically, maybe not. Not technically correct, but really going forward, the answer is yes, and this will be more apparent to tax authorities. Increasingly, European businesses are exploring and implementing tax engines, which were previously predominantly used in America and LATAM. So tax engines is one thing that we are seeing more of. Master data. So reviewing master data to highlight issues in data quality is an important step. However, there is always the risk here of static data. An example being a customer today might have a valid VAT number that you've checked and verified. However, in 6 months' time, this could change and could potentially leave you open to a tax risk. And also performing more data analysis and verification on VAT return data, and also how this compares to other data such as EC sales lists, interest stats, etc., that you might also make. And as mentioned just now, this does appear to be a growing area for tax investigations. So thinking about how RSM could help, if you've got concerns regarding MTD and digital links, we have been performing a lot of MTD digital link and process reviews, so this might be beneficial. A VAT data quality health check is a very targeted and a very specific data quality review, focusing on data quality and accuracy of the VAT treatment at the transactional level. So these can quite often be useful after implementing a new ERP. We're also in the process of launching a VAT data analytics portal whereby you can upload transactions and run a large number of exception tests on your data, as well as see things like trend analysis. So if that sort of thing might be useful, then just let us know. Otherwise, I hope that was interesting, and thank you for your time, and I will hand you back to Adil.
Thank you very much, Tom. Yeah, I think that was interesting, but maybe it's just me with tax. I like it. I like listening about tax, so I think I might be odd there. But if there was anything that was of attention for you that you might find interesting, please do reach out to us, and we can see how we can help there. So this leads us nicely on to our next presentation, which will be done by Kamlesh and Tim Evans. So Kamlesh works for NetSuite. He heads up the SuiteTax team there, and he'll be giving a bit of time to go through an overview of SuiteTax in more detail, and also an update as to where that's going. So I'll hand that over to Kamlesh.
Thanks, Adil. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so let's have a look at what SuiteTax is. So just before we go into any detail, the usual sort of safe harbor statement in terms of what you hear and see. Just be careful, don't make any investment decisions based on this. So what I'm going to do over the next 10 minutes is just highlight some of the key areas of SuiteTax where the questions that we really want to answer is, well, why should you be considering SuiteTax? Why should you move to SuiteTax? What are the benefits it may bring to your business, etc. So first of all, on the subsidiary page, today in Legacy, there is just one field for you to enter the VAT registration number, which is at the header level. A lot of the customers and some of you also today may actually have multiple nexuses within your subsidiary. Maybe you don't have physical presence, but you have a VAT registration in another country, and therefore, within the same subsidiary, you may have set up several nexuses. There are some sort of compliance gaps, of course, in terms of determination and so on. So what SuiteTax does is within the new tax registrations tab, allows you to create not just all the nexuses, but will default the tax agency names for that country. You can enter your own sort of tax registration number. Whilst this might sound straightforward, this means you can now actually have your registration number on all sales invoices, sales orders, etc., thereby meeting compliance without customization. You can choose the tax engine. So we have the NetSuite engine. Tim mentioned tax engine as well. As NetSuite users, you already have the native tax engine. SuiteTax is the next generation tax engine from Legacy, so you have that. But in addition, we also have 6 partners. So you have the option to use NetSuite or one of the external partners for that. And then there are these 2 other fields, effective from and valid until. So very likely you will register for VAT somewhere. But in the event you deregister in any particular country, you now have the option also to enter valid until date. The advantages of these are with these 2 dates pre-filled, there will be no tax codes that will appear if you're no longer registered in a particular tax jurisdiction, etc. Okay, so it helps you with maintaining your nexuses as well as what tax codes appear, etc., and your transaction forms. Tax rates. So Tim mentioned tax codes, VAT determination, etc. As a NetSuite user, you have a significant advantage with SuiteTax in that it's our job as NetSuite to maintain tax rate changes for 110 countries. You don't have to do that. So we actually provide that. We update that on a monthly basis and monitor that. So recently there was a change in Germany, for example. So here's a screenshot. Users on SuiteTax didn't have to change anything. At the end of the month, we pushed the update and the rate is there. So the history is maintained. Not only that, should you go and edit something or create a credit note for an earlier period, it will pick up the previous rate. So you don't have to worry about what rate am I applying to my transactions. It's always based on the rate start and end date. 31st of December, of course, we're all thinking of New Year's, albeit perhaps still indoors this year, but you don't have to worry about, well, what do I need to do to my NetSuite account? Because we'll be pushing those changes, for example, in Germany, when they flip back to 19%. Okay, so Ireland and Germany are just examples. Of course, there were other changes like in Austria, Saudi, etc. I'm going to come to this address validation in a minute. There's also format validation for non-EU countries in SuiteTax. So right now, for the UK and a lot of the EU countries, you just have to make sure that the VAT number is correct. And in legacy, you have that validation, but it validates that it's there for a particular business. It doesn't actually link it to the business itself. SuiteTax does a lot more. So it looks at the tax registration number, and this is, by the way, a customer record that I'm looking at. Again, tax registrations. So as you enter the customer tax registration number and select the nexus or tax jurisdiction associated with it, NetSuite does validation, which says, okay, the number is valid, but it actually brings back the name of the business in that database. I've deliberately shown 3 different ones here, okay, to show that it returns the address. More importantly, it also returns a consultation number and a date stamp. So Tim mentioned about the data quality. It doesn't actually exist today, or HMRC haven't legislated anything today, but in Denmark it's required. So should in the UK, Germany or France or any EU country that rule come in the future, you're a step ahead because it's already there in SuiteTax. You have the address, you have the consultation number, so you need not worry about making any changes to your ERP system. Another point, again, HMRC are pretty good, but if you're in Germany, France, or some of the other countries, they look at the tax point, i.e. when was the service provided, when were the goods fulfilled. Today in legacy, there's only one date, which is your transaction date, and the tax reports are based on that. Over the years, we've had a lot of queries and requests for an additional date. So now with SuiteTax, you have the tax point date, and that's what the tax reports are all based on. Okay, so you have a transaction date, you have a tax point date, and of course you have the option to use just one if you should wish to do so. The other point on the nexus or tax jurisdiction record is this whole area here, which is completely new. You'll see the nexus preferences. So when the bundle is installed, NetSuite will pre-populate them with different types of transactions. So your domestic sales, purchases, exports, imports, EU sales and purchases, etc., as well as default tax codes. This is all brand new in SuiteTax. You do and can, of course, have the ability to override and change this as you wish. Outside of that, there is greater flexibility. So we've introduced these tax types. Most of them are preset when you install the bundle, but you can also change them or create your own. And on the right-hand side here, you'll see these various checkboxes. So it could be something, might be a reverse charge, but something that you cannot reclaim in your business, but you want that element posted to the same account as the net cost. So you have the ability to, for example, check reverse charge and post item cost, and it means the VAT isn't deductible, but you can post it to your P&L or your balance sheet, whichever account it may apply to. So here's an example. This comes up very frequently with all the legacy customers where you have multiple bundles. You have to actually create journal entries because anything that is a reverse charge and not deductible, you end up having to do a separate journal entry, and you also lose the audit trail. What I've got here in this example is the vendor bill, which is for 540 euros. Okay, some of it relates to inventory, some of it relates to VAT that is reclaimable, but there's also an item where reverse charge is applied. Of course, as a purchaser, I'm responsible for it, but it's not on the vendor bill. So using the set of tax codes and tax types, NetSuite now actually creates that. You'll see here in the memo field, this is reverse charge post to item cost. So there's an additional 60 euros added, which is not part of the vendor bill, and that actually is posted to my inventory item, meaning I cannot reclaim it. So this is again automation. It means you don't have to do anything manually. You don't have multiple bundles to report it, etc. Okay, on the transaction forms, there is a change. We've added an additional tab, if you like. In legacy, everything is under the items tab. So you still have your item, your tax amount, etc. But as most of the information is really required by accounting people or tax accountants, we've created this additional tab where you'll see the reference per line, you'll see the net amount, the tax type, tax code. Tax basis, it could be that you have an item you're selling for, say, 20,000, but only 15,000 of it is taxable per item. Applies mainly in the US, by the way. But so there is a tax basis as well, tax rate, tax amount. Okay, all the information here you can now actually bring into your reporting at a line level. So it gives you a greater sort of audit trail, if you like. The other area is this. Again, on that same tab, at the top, you'll see some changes. So if you have multiple tax jurisdictions within a subsidiary, if you have the permission levels, you can actually change that. So if you have warehouses that are in different places, NetSuite's lookup logic does the tax based on location. So in legacy, it's only based on the ship to. So now we look at the ship from, the ship to, the location field, and then the engine will return the tax code, etc. So you have the ability to change the nexus if you have the permission, if NetSuite is determined something different. On the right-hand side, you have the ability to change anything for any rounding, etc., particularly on the purchases. But this field here, tax registration number, some of you have been asking over the past few years about distance selling, which is not supported in SuiteTax, but in NetSuite, I beg your pardon. But in SuiteTax, there is a kind of a workaround. You can actually come to this and under the drop-down have no registration number, and then the tax codes and the tax rates will default to a B2C transaction, which means, yes, okay, it's a little bit of manual effort, but you can actually create a distance selling transaction in SuiteTax and NetSuite. Okay, last but not least, again, permission levels are critical, and that's the only way you can override anything within your transactions. Compliance tax, again, this is on the Nexus record. Some of the tax in the UK, it's pretty simple. It just requires you to say customer is liable to pay VAT. But what happens if you're in Germany or France, you want it in your native language, of course. In legacy that all had to be scripted because everything is hard-coded. But in SuiteTax, under the Nexus record, you can add the compliance text. Equally, if you have in-house skill sets, you can actually have it in multiple languages. But whatever text you need, you can now have on your sales transactions. And lastly, before we go to the next subject, Brexit, we'll send out a note later on, but rest assured, we are looking at everything. Of course, from a legal standpoint, we're still waiting for all the EU and the UK government to agree things, but it will be something that we will be having by the end of December, hopefully, if there is any agreement. As you may know, Northern Ireland is going to present a headache in terms of reporting because it will be treated different to the rest of the UK, but we'll keep you posted on that. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kailash. And just to add to that, we have developed, I mean, you can see there's some great features coming in or available in SuiteTax. We have developed a migration from legacy to SuiteTax. So if SuiteTax is something that you're interested in, please do let us know. We're keen to get people off legacy tax and onto SuiteTax because it is so much better and offers so much more functionality than the legacy tax system does. So if this is something of interest, please do let us know.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kailash, and thank you, Tim. Okay, so our final session, so James will be running our final session, which will be giving a sneak peek into the NetSuite product roadmap.
Okay, thanks, Adil. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Thanks for hanging in. Some really interesting topics. So what I'll do is I'll go through this, hopefully leave some time at the end to take a couple of questions. There's been a lot of great content today, and I know there's one or two questions already. So I won't dwell on the safe harbor statement, particularly in my session. Please don't make any buying decisions based on what you may hear today. I will definitely be talking about some futures, so please bear that in mind. I think one of the things, just important for me just to kind of kick off, and I think this is a thread that's run through the session today. My group, I look after a team that spans Latin America, EMEA, and Asia Pacific. And I think what you could see through Tim's session, through to what Kamlesh was talking around with SuiteTax is that we've got a dual focus really in terms of product. It's about acting global, so global capabilities for you and your organisations to operate internationally, but also be local. Be local is also extremely important for us because we really want NetSuite to really behave and be used like a system that was designed in a local market, whether you have users in Germany, whether you have users in Spain, wherever they may be. So whenever we look at anything, particularly in my group, we refer back to this statement, acting global and being local. It's really important for everything that we do. Now, obviously, we've got a very big suite. We cover a lot of things within NetSuite. I'm going to kind of sort of drill into some of the kind of the meat of what we do and talk about some of the stuff around financials in particular, but also give you a bit of a broad brush look at some of the things that we're thinking about and what's really driving our development. We're in some very interesting times at the moment, and our emphasis is probably changing a little bit, understandably. However, from a global financial strategy and industry trends point of view, again, I think everything that we've spoken about this morning really does just lift up these points really in terms of what we're doing. The CFO is striving to be a strategic business partner, looking to add value, as opposed to, sort of being, the number crunchers pulling, disparate pieces of data together. We want to give some insights. Right now that's crucially important for any business. There's challenging market conditions. Regulatory and compliance is just getting probably more difficult. So, we want to kind of automate some of that, make that a little bit easier so you can, really sort of drill in and use the information that NetSuite holds. So there is a strong drive towards automation. Again, Tim mentioned some of those things that we're doing, particularly around the cash management area and bank reconciliation. And we are starting to look at, some of the technologies out there in terms of blockchain, machine learning, robotic process automation, and AI. It's really important to us. However, if anyone saw Evan Goldberg's on-air presentation, we've got a virtual suite world going at the moment. He spoke about this very eloquently. We don't want to use machine learning, RPA or AI just for the sake of it. We want to use it where it brings business value. So that's really important to us. So when you start to see some of this technology coming into NetSuite, it will really be done so it can drive business benefit decision making, as opposed to us just being able to tick the box and say that we've got some sort of artificial intelligence feature. We've interestingly heard about VAT and global compliance GRC issues. That's critically important to my group. It's also critically important to Camlesh as well. So compliance will continue to be important for us. We'll continue to concentrate on that. There's some big things happening and will continue to happen. So that's our number one task. They're the things that we have to do for our customers. So that will continue and will be a focus. Finally, just on trends, the other thing that we're seeing a lot of interest in is planning. The financial planning and analysis, FP&A. That's really important. Moving towards a real corporate performance management environment. We have some nice tools now within NetSuite that we can offer. And really where that really gives added benefit is this single platform approach. So you'll see a lot more around that area too, moving into later releases. Again, in our on-air sessions that are running at the moment, we're starting to talk about continuous accounting, the end of R2R, record to report. These are the things, again, that we're thinking about that's really important. And again, some of this, is very clear, a modern cloud GL, continuous global consolidation, immediate globalization, allowing you to grow, meet statutory reporting requirements, and also actionable intelligence. At the point of use within NetSuite, I want that personalized, I want it contextualized, and I also want some automation. So changing that paradigm of processing. So all that's really aimed at making us agile, collaborative, and ultimately, having that constant governance. And that really is our kind of bottom line, things that we need to do for all of our customers. So strategically, that's kind of some of the things we're looking at, and that's keeping me awake at night in terms of what we need to provide and continue to innovate on for all of our customers and prospects. I just wanted to talk a little bit about recent releases and capabilities. And obviously, Tim did a wonderful job talking about 20.2. I have got a couple of things that I'm going to add to that. And in actual fact, this audience will be the first people within Europe to hear this. So quite exciting news. So the first one is, Tim spoke about a bank feed suite app. So basically what you'd have seen in the 20.1 release is that our North American customers had a new direct banking capability. So to be able to connect to their financial institutions seamlessly. I'm pleased to announce that yesterday, I think it was yesterday, no, it's Tuesday, I lose track of the days, on Tuesday, 6th of October, we actually released the brand new Bank Feed Suite app that automates the upload of your bank and credit card data directly from your financial institution accounts into NetSuite. And so basically it's a very, very simple process of choosing your financial institution, whether that's HSBC, BNP, Deutsche Bank, whatever it might be. Within a few clicks, you'll be automatically connected to your financial institution, and NetSuite will be able to retrieve cleared and processed bank and credit card transactions daily from your accounts within Europe. So the great benefit of this is it's going to automate the import of that data to enable you to reconcile your NetSuite accounts. The important thing to remember about this is that in the release that we've made this week, on Tuesday, is that it supports what we call PSD2 compliant connections. So PSD2, for those of you not aware, are the open banking regulations that most of the financial institutions have signed up to. So you'll see this prevalent whenever you interact with your bank, whether you use a Monzo banking application or anything else. The open banking regulations govern its use. So the initial release that we've done, is compliant with PSD2. What I will state is that later on, in the early part of 2021, we will release a further update to the Bank Feed Suite app, which will allow access to global institutions. So that will scoop up a number of institutions outside of EMEA into JPAC and beyond. So there will be a second subsequent release, which will allow us to do the same thing and also on non-PSD2 type accounts. So there will be a second iteration of that coming in the new year. But we're super excited about this. We really wanted to automate this process for our customers. We've worked very hard on it, and I'm pleased to announce to you all today that that's now available to all of our customers. And also importantly, that service is also provided free of charge. Okay. So that there is no cost to you to do that, and can connect to any number of your financial institutions. So we're really pleased to talk about this one. So what this means is that you can conveniently connect to kind of upwards of 2,000 financial institutions within Europe. So that automatic daily import of bank data. You can also optionally choose to refresh that data at any point if you want to bring in new data, daily updated bank account balances. This is all going to work and be in conjunction with the bank reconciliation capabilities that we have and the updates that Tim mentioned earlier. And also importantly, which is a question everybody would have, it incorporates bank level security. One of the things that we obviously wanted to do was ensure that all of this was very secure. It's clearly going to be of importance to all of our customers. So, please note that is the case. Getting access, there are some prerequisites. I don't want to get too technical for today. There are some prerequisites that you'll need to have to enable the feature in your account. So things like service, SuiteScript, client SuiteScript, custom records. You have to obviously have an existing online registration to your financial institution. We're not going to be asking you for your username and password. I will add that quickly. But you do have to be registered to your financial institution and use that, and also allow browser pop-ups, because obviously what we'll be doing is connecting automatically to your bank or credit card accounts. So that's important. So the Suite app name is called Bank Feeds. As I said, there's no added license cost for you to utilize it. And it will be compatible with NetSuite accounts in 20.1 and 20.2 versions. Again, as Tim stated at the top of the call, everyone's going through phasing anyway, so should be on the 20.2 version shortly, but that will be available for you. One thing I'll mention very, very quickly here, because there was a question that came from the group about importing customer payments with the new bank functionalities. That's a really great question, and I'm glad somebody asked this. So we've been doing a big overhaul of our cash management capabilities, and the automatic connection to your financial institutions was just part of that journey, along with bank reconciliation improvements, automatic creation of bank transactions. The next part of this, in actual fact, and really crucially important to us, is the ability to auto apply customer payments through that process. So the good news is, in actual fact, this is ironic. I'm actually speaking to the senior leadership team about this capability later on this evening. It is the next item up on our roadmap, and we will be delivering this in 2021. Okay, so we've got some designs. We've worked on the automatic cash application, and so that is coming. So I can't give you too much more detail at the moment, as I say, because that's work in flight at the moment. But needless to say, all of these capabilities, we're actually trying to get to the point where the best bank rec is no bank rec, and so that automatic cash application is really going to help us round out some of that capability. So please note that one's coming. The other thing that I wanted to mention as well today, and for any of you who listened to me last time, I mentioned Suite People. So the other thing that we've been working on is a launch of Suite People into the UK. Again, from last time, we launched Suite People in 2017, in actual fact, at Suite World for our American base. We've been diligently working behind the scenes to extend the offering. And so probably actually around the beginning of lockdown, which was an interesting experience, we signed up about 8 to 10 customers on Suite People who are now all implemented and running Suite People. So essentially, Suite People is our HCM capability within NetSuite. If we talk about the NetSuite suite itself and the pieces of that puzzle, the one obvious piece that we didn't have was HR capabilities. So we do have that now, and what we're doing is we're commencing and moving forward with a UK limited release availability of Suite People. As I say, we've got a number of customers running successfully in a controlled phase. We've implemented them. They're using the product. They're very happy with the product. And we're now extending the availability further to UK customers. So we're looking to onboard some more customers to get using Suite People. There are some caveats around it in terms of the types of customers we'd like to work with. And, there's a number of things there that RSM and ourselves can help with. But basically what I wanted to do was just again, kind of announce that we're looking to move further into Suite People and make it available for our customers and our existing customers operating with NetSuite. So again, if anybody's interested, please reach out to me or your RSM team and we can discuss that further. Okay, rattling on, because I would like, to give the guys an opportunity to take some questions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about next and future, releases and developments that we've got coming, and again, some of the things that we're thinking about, finishing up with a little bit of a highlight on the roadmap and some of the things that we're doing. So, innovation drives automation. As I said at the top of the presentation, some of the things that we're doing are going to be driven by, very much about intelligence. We've got this concept of the intelligence suite. So we are pushing into things like blockchain, robotic process automation, AI, machine learning. And we're going to see some of that coming into NetSuite. Indeed, we've released our first suite of intelligent features with things like the supply chain control tower, which intelligently learns about your supply chain and order outages, etc., and can, give you warnings and give you remedial actions to take in NetSuite. So we'll be continuing down this journey. One of the things that you're going to see next year is a lot more about AP automation and also AR automation, and we'll be using some things to do that for us. Some scan and capture type technologies will be coming into NetSuite. So with that, there will be some intelligence capabilities on the back side of it as well. So it's all part of this automation, making things easier and more streamlined for our customers. So we will be focusing on finance automation, looking at from simple things like automating, journal entries. As I've said, cash management remains, one of our primary focuses. So, performing and documenting reconciliations. We're also looking at things like GL reconciliations as well, and how we can bring some intelligence in there and automate that process. Accounts payable automation, as I've said, this will be probably one of the next big things that we do. We've been kind of working on the edges of it for a while, but that will be a next step for us. So looking at OCR technologies, those things, and bringing that into the NetSuite product. We really do want to, streamline some of our workflows. Again, really important for us. There will be some stuff on the planning and analysis side. Again, NetSuite planning and budgeting. How we can, automate some of that, and again make that simpler for our customers, and also accounts receivable. I've mentioned a little bit about the auto cash application, and that is coming. That will also be another big thing that we do for the new year. We have an aggressive development timeline to deliver on that. So efficiency, intelligence, compliance, all of these things are important to us. Again, areas that we're considering around things like revenue recognition, lease accounting, billing platform. I've mentioned NetSuite planning and budgeting, and also things around balancing segments and some clever things we can do around that automatically and getting some intelligence built in. So they're the themes really running through everything that we're doing. And ultimately for us, it's investing in the modern finance function. As you've seen today, I've made a new announcement hot off the press about some of the capabilities that we're delivering. Kamlesh has spoken about the huge amount of work that his team have done around control and compliance in terms of the SuiteTax engine. We're excited about that. That's going to secure NetSuite's growth over the next 5, 10, 15 years. Moving into international, I own the international teams. There have been a lot more coming in terms of specific capabilities for our, international markets. And so we'll be making some announcements around that. And as I say, productivity, the automation piece from AP and AR particularly, you'll see coming within NetSuite. And visibility and intelligence. Everything we do now has to have an intelligent lens on it to make it most useful to our customers. And then finally, just now, next and future, some of the things that we'll be doing, as I say, auto cash application is on there. I've spoken about Suite People in the UK, APAR automation, some of those things. I'm not going to go through every individual item on here. It's just really just to give you, an idea of some of the themes. Intercompany framework will continue to grow in its relevance for our customers, particularly our international expanding customers. Cash management remains an absolute focus for us. Compliance, through to our general financials, global support, operational support, and analytics, intelligence, and experience. We'll make these slides available. So you can pick out anything that's important to you. But rest assured, we have an aggressive development timeline, investing heavily in the NetSuite product, and we hope to have some more exciting announcements for you moving forward. And so with that, with about 5 minutes left, and I'm sure people are wanting to get some lunch, etc., I'll hand back to Adil for questions.
Thank you very much for that, James. I hope that was interesting for you guys to get a view of the direction the product's going. So let's go into a bit of Q&A. We've had a couple of questions. Some of the questions were around copies of the presentation. We will be sending this out. We'll be sending a flyer out to you in the coming days to give you an overview of what we've discussed here. We'll also be publishing this presentation in digital format over the coming weeks. So we've had a few questions on SuiteTax as well. So I'll hand over to Kamlesh to give an answer to those questions.
Okay, do you want to read the questions? I can't see it on the chat yet.
Yep, so one of the questions was around whether data can be used, their current customer data can be used for testing. Can they test with their data in SuiteTax, for SuiteTax?
Absolutely, yeah. We're encouraging customers to approach us, and we're happy to provide a sandbox so you can look at SuiteTax, test SuiteTax using your own data, and then once you're happy with it, arrange some migration plans with your RSM contacts.
Great. And then kind of in line with that as well, the costing, was there any costing for SuiteTax from a licensing perspective.
No, there's no license costs whatsoever for tax and compliance in NetSuite. The only cost that you'd incur is any configuration or implementation via RSM.
Okay, great. So I think that was it. We haven't received any more questions. However, we're happy to, if there's anything that comes to mind after this meeting is finished, please do reach out to us. We're really interested in getting your feedback as well. We want to make this session as kind of tailored and focused to what you guys are expecting and what will be beneficial to you. So really feedback for us would be absolutely imperative, and we'll try to incorporate that as we kind of go on to ensure that you're getting the best benefit from these sessions. If you do have any questions on what we've discussed here, we've got our contact details on the screen at this moment. Please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll do our very best to help you out and get the questions answered. So we hope you found that interesting. We hope you found that useful, and you've picked up some key points that you can use going forward. That's it from us, and thank you very much for joining, and we look forward to speaking and working with you in the future. Thank you.